As a Christian working woman, you have many roles, from your responsibility with family and friends to community and work. How do you connect all that you do with all that you are and still have your faith shine through? It's a challenge, but you are up to it. The She Works for Him podcast is the gathering place to empower Christian working women to live out their calling at work by connecting them to God, resources, and each other through powerful faith stories from other working sisters in Christ. Welcome to She Works for Him.
You've tuned in to She Works for Him, where we connect Christian working women to God, resources, and to each other. We are your hosts, Martha Brangenberg and Katherine Gates, and we're going to be joined today by Celia Swanson. But before we get to that, I just want to remind you that you can go and find out more about She Works for Him online at sheworksforhim.com. That's sheworks4him.com, and the same on social media. You know, one of the things that we love about this podcast is being able to connect to you to resources that you may not be aware of. So listeners, friends, people that are, Christian working women everywhere need to connect in amazing ways. And we have an opportunity this fall through the Boldly Conference. So, Katherine, you remember the date of that conference?
It's October 8th, Friday, October 8th. It's a full day. And Martha, I think there's going to be like 18 main stage speakers, and our guest, Celia Swanson, is going to be one of those speakers.
Yes. So we can all find out about it by going to boldlyconference.com, learning about it. We can be together virtually connected, which is amazing, and spend a day together and see what God has in store and learn about some different areas of being bold. And another great resource is September is kind of like encouragement month. September 12th is actually a day of encouragement. And our friends at Dayspring have brought that to our attention, and we're so grateful for that. Katherine, what do you think that why do we need to be encouraged?
Women, more than anybody, we need to know that we are valued, that we need to know the kind of value that we bring to our organizations, to our friendships even. Mm-hmm. And so it really helps when we can encourage other women by letting them know what it is we see in them, where we see their strengths, right? And so that they have greater confidence to walk in those.
Excellent. So join us as we encourage each other, not only in the month of September, but all year long, because ladies, we need that from each other. Katherine,
Absolutely.
Take it away.
Ladies, the percentage of women at executive levels, even today, leaves lots of room for improvement. So when women do make it to the executive level, they often experience being in the vast minority. For those women, the greatest challenges often come less from the responsibilities of leadership and more from navigating what really feels like male territory. I've actually heard women lament that they wish they could figure out how to be more like a man so they could be more successful. But that is not the answer, something Celia Swanson can attest to. As the first female EVP for Walmart, Celia experienced being in the minority and felt challenged to find ways to fit in. Thankfully, she had great leaders who encouraged her to find her authentic leadership voice and be true to how God designed her. Celia has experienced great success as well as significant setbacks both personally and professionally. But those challenges have helped her develop the ability to lead with grace, thanks to her faith and very supportive leaders that she's had in her life. Today, Celia is an author, a speaker, and an executive consultant. She's a widow and she has one adult daughter. Celia, welcome to She Works for Him.
Oh, thank you, Katherine. I'm very excited to be here. And hello, Martha. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. So we are going to talk about how you connect your faith to your work and what that looks like for you. But before we do, can you tell us how you became a Jesus follower?
Yes, I am blessed that I grew up in a Christian household. Both of my parents, very strong religious foundation, Christian foundation. We went to church every Sunday. They sang in the choir. My mother played the organ or the piano. And so they used their gifts at church in many different ways. At one point in time, I remember my mother being the head of the budget process. I thought, my mom, but she was really quite capable of doing that and qualified. But I grew up in a household where going to church and the Christian principles and values were taught, reinforced, and they became really my founding principles and values. It was when I went to college that I actually kind of disengaged from a, a, a daily and weekly practice of talking with Jesus and following the Word. But I did become a Jesus follower when I was in age 10, Easter time. I went through the classes, I got the pins, I got the Bible, and I became a Jesus follower. So it was just a part of my life. But when I then went into the workplace and my career started to really take off, the greatest struggle that I had was learning how to give up my give up the way that I was trying to take control. That and this struggle is still a struggle I deal with, is how do I use my gifts and live to God's plan and not try to keep taking that over and thinking that it's my plan or that I'm in control. It's this constant struggle. But I've been really blessed to have, a relationship with Jesus my entire life.
That's awesome. I can certainly relate to that need for control. I think a lot of women can. So what does it look like for you to include your faith in your work, to really live your faith out at work?
Yeah, this is such a great question because I didn't talk about my faith in a very public way. I practiced my faith. I went to church. I found great messages that inspired me and caused me to want a deeper relationship with Jesus, but I didn't talk about it. And in reflection, I did set my own values and principles that were completely based on the teachings of Jesus. And so I call them my bright lines, because what I had to learn is these were the values that I would stand for, but they're also the ones that I wouldn't stand for. And that got tested several times through the career process and probably still will be tested in life. But when I really netted down to, my principles there, that was most important to me, is what were my guiding principles, my bright lines.
So I want to ask this question because I think this is really a good place to camp for a minute, because a lot of people in their work, they think, well, of course, if I'm going to incorporate my faith with my work, that it there needs to be maybe they think it needs to be a big production. You said, well, I didn't actually really talk about it. So, but yet did people know that there was something unique about you and something that drew them to you? Maybe when nobody else was available for them?
Well, yes, I think the way I conducted myself, this gracious is a word that I've been people have used to describe my leadership style. And that was all about respect for the individual and caring for others, lifting other people up, this constant never belittle, always lift up. And that's how they saw me navigate 7 CEO changes at Sam's Club and Walmart, being really the only executive that was the constant in the Sam's Club organization anyway. The constant was constantly me, and all the senior leadership changed around me, the president, my peers as executive vice president. And what that built was resilience and this consistency that people could see in how I operated in very tough situations, but also how I operated when things were really going well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that, I think that's just a good lesson for all of us. And all of those things that you listed, I could probably find a scripture for every one of them, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we are to love our neighbors as ourselves. There are so many things that the word gives us guidance for how we live out our life, and doing that with excellence. So talk about that. You as a Christian working woman worked in the largest corporation in the world.
Right.
What was the biggest struggle for you?
It's a great question, because the biggest struggle for me was making sure that I always lived up to what was unique about me, what was authentic about me, and standing up, using my voice, and using every opportunity to understand what I brought was unique and different, and it was necessary. Instead of sitting back and quietly listening and responding in a wonderful way, it was this challenge to really be confident, caring, and results oriented. And I had to learn that over time. Before I came to Walmart, respect for the individual wasn't always practiced the way that it is at Walmart. It is practiced constantly within Walmart. And so I also think that one of the reasons I came to Sam's Club and Walmart was because of the values that I saw in the organization. I'd been in human resources for a long time in my career, and trying to change the corporate culture or adjust the corporate culture is practically impossible. And I wanted to join an organization where I could add value. And I found that. But I got tested constantly. Were you really going to be someone who shared their voice, understood their unique value, and could be counted on to lift others up during the hardest times?
That's great. And there's going to be more of this story as we come back after a little break on She Works for Him. We're here with Celia Swanson. We are your co-hosts, Katherine Gates and Martha Brangenberg. We'll be right back.
Life's messy. It can be tough. You can see it in their faces. You can hear it in their voices. People. Everyday people need help. And most days, people are either one discouraging word away from giving up, or one encouraging word from pressing in. Pressing on. And pressing through. Today, you can be that difference to someone.
Welcome back to She Works for Him. We're here with Celia Swanson. And Celia, you've given us a little peek behind the curtain of what it's like to be a woman in such a large corporation with so many things that we just can't even comprehend, all of the challenges you've had to deal with. Katherine, why don't you take it from here?
Sure. Celia, you've shared that a large part of your success was developing the ability to lead with grace. What does that look like?
Thank you for asking that question. I call it a gracious and strong mindset, because it has to permeate how you show up, how you think, and how you react. And then people constantly, they need to see that behavior from you on a constant basis.
Mm-hmm.
So gracious and strong mindset is what I would describe my leadership style to be, and one I really want to promote in others. But leading with grace really is all about leading with the heart, leading with the mind, and leading with respect. And the common theme here for me is respect. I mean, above all else, do not strip me of my dignity. And I will not strip others of their dignity. But that's what leading with grace is to me.
You know, and Celia, I want to just interject right there that for people that maybe don't know, you actually have a lot of resources around this whole idea of gracious and strong and leading with grace. So you have graciously offered to give away a copy of your book, Leading Gracious and Strong. So listeners, call our listener line at 866-713-9675, 866-713-WORK. And you can leave me your name and email address, and I will get in touch with you about getting a copy of that book to you. But everyone can go to celiaswanson.com, and there is a free ebook download there called Leading with Grace. So great exposure for us to get a little bit deeper into this, because we're not going to cover it all today, right? We're not going to learn everything about leading with grace on this show today, but we want to introduce you to not only Celia Swanson and her life, but also the resources that God's been writing through her to share with us. So remember, listener line, and also go to celiaswanson.com.
That's great.
Thank you, Martha.
So Celia, you mentioned earlier, right? It was really when you came to Walmart and Sam's Club that you saw respect for the individual played out, and respect is a big part of leading with grace. So I would imagine that most women don't see leading with grace modeled very frequently. So how can women cultivate that ability to lead with grace and maybe support one another in doing so?
I think it's a great question, because you don't see many role models of gracious and strong mindset or leading with grace. When it comes to unpacking those three components, leading with the heart, the couple of behavioral components is have courage. And so when you're in a situation where there's a risk, have the courage and trust in yourself, but have the courage to speak your mind and to ask for what you need. Care and show it is actually something women do really well. And it's a component that could be the on-ramp into leading with grace. And doing it consistently in small ways, in large ways, leaving notes, sending notes to folks, ending a conversation with an uplifting comment, being very direct about your feedback with people, but always delivering it in a way where it lifts them up and gives them real concreteness that they can go work on. Those are all ways that women can actually begin the process of leading with grace. Leading with the mind, quite honestly, is be present. I know we have lots of different competing issues coming, at us from home, from work, from our whole life. Be present in the moment when you are with others. It's one of the greatest gifts you can give people, that you're not distracted by what else is going on, but you care enough about them that they're the most important thing at that particular moment. And then I talked about dignity just a minute ago, but I think it is also the leader's job to defend dignity. I mean, I had a boss, and he felt like building strength and confidence in a leader happened when he tore you down. And he would tear people down constantly in small ways, public ways, private ways. That's just how he thought he would pound in confidence and excellence. And I stood up and said, you can pick on me all day long, but you cannot pick on my team or my people. Unacceptable. And, I showed up that way in public meetings. If he would try to attack, I would say, okay, I'll accept that feedback. But I'm not going to allow you to, do that to others in the organization on my team. And he learned to stop that. And if he had really some criticism that he wanted to share, he did that privately, and we talked about that. And then he saw the fruits of that approach. And so he kind of backed off me and tried others, which I really wanted to impact that he never do that he remove that from his leadership style. I never got that one.
But you taught him how to treat you.
Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah. And, that happened with a couple of different leaders at some of my darkest moments, where I got challenged about, I call it my trash can story, but I got challenged by the vice chairman of the company, whether or not I was on the team or off the team. And this was after 5 president changes at Sam's Club. And what would have been super easy to go home that night, pray, consult with my husband, and walk in the next morning and say, I'm off the team. Let's figure this one out. How do we make a smooth transition? But I didn't. I went back and said, I'm on the team. But I want you to know where I'm coming from. And I really deserve respect for the individual. And what just happened in the last day was not a demonstration of respect for the individual.
Wow.
That is really hard to do. But that's my point about having courage and having a bright line that just never allows you to deviate from that.
Yeah.
So I want to ask another question, and then we're going to get to a break real quick. But just how then do you feel that our faith can help us to be more gracious in those moments when we're under so much pressure, when it would be easy to just say, fine, I'm off, but God obviously wasn't ready for you to do that. So how can our faith give us that extra courage for the grace that we need?
I first think it's constant prayer. When I've had my toughest moments, or when my behavior hasn't been consistent with being a gracious and strong leader, those are the moments where I go straight to prayer and say, I'm ignoring something, or I'm trying to take control again, or something about this is, I'm not able to accomplish your vision for what needs to happen at this point in time. So allow me to listen and to be the vessel that you want me to be. That has always proven to be the very best thing I could do.
What a great word. So we'll be right back in just a moment with more with Celia Swanson right here on She Works for Him. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Martha. At Mary and Martha, our mission is women building women up in faith and business.
And I'm Mary, and our vision is to bring eternal hope and encouragement to every home, every day.
We sell beautiful products, grow teams, and build businesses. But Mary and Martha is so much more.
We gather in homes, laugh, share life, and encourage one another.
Learn more about the Mary and Martha difference at maryandmartha.com.
maryandmartha.com.
Welcome back to She Works for Him with your hosts, Martha Brangenberg and Catherine Gates. We are here with Celia Swanson. And Celia, I want to make sure that our listeners know a couple of things before we finish out the show today. One is that we're going to get an opportunity to hear you speak probably on some of these ideas in a bigger way. Catherine, why don't you remind our listeners about the Boldly Conference?
Yeah, so the Boldly Conference is taking place Friday, October 8th. You can check it out at boldlyconference.com. And yeah, Celia Swanson will be one of the main stage speakers at that conference. That'll have about 18 main stage speakers. And it's really the only conference that's really designed for women and addressing faith and work.
Yeah. And in an amazingly collaborative way. So women, this is our chance to rise up to the occasion and show the world what unity and collaboration really looks like between organizations. It's going to be an amazing time seeing a lot of people that we may recognize and we can learn from each other. And so boldlyconference.com. So Celia, why don't you give us some kind of top tool that you use to keep your work centered on Christ? There's so many distractions in this world, right? So what do you
Yes.
just give us a little tip right here. We need some help.
My top tool actually is the Bible. And I use resources that allow me to focus on messages within the Bible that I need to hear. So YouVersion is one type of tool. I also really connect with the messages that are being taught at my church or by another individual or church service. It's so interesting that in my darkest moments, I would go to hear the word of God and it would speak to me so directly. It was like nobody else was around me. And that word was just meant for Celia. And I didn't really realize all that when I was coming up the ranks because I was just so driven and, everything seemed to be falling in place. My plan seemed to be completely aligned with God's plan. And then a couple of times throughout my career, God's plan was clearly slightly different. Now, I don't think I was off path or off track, but he had a different challenge for me to face or dark moment for me to face and to navigate and show that God still was at work even in my darkest moments.
So, I just want to point out that working for the largest retailer that we know and the Bible is your main resource. I think that's so solid. And I just, we know that it has the widest circulation in the world, but let's open it and use it.
Exactly.
It applies to life and it applies to work. And I love that you brought up the sermons, right? The sermons are not for Sunday. They're for life and work and all of life.
Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah. And they speak to you. If you're open, you will think that message was written just for you. And it was.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. And I love that you bring up the Bible too. It is the most powerful tool that we can turn to. Agreed. So Celia, this has been a fantastic conversation. I know that women are going to get so much out of this. I'd love to just give you an opportunity to share one final piece of wisdom that you would love to leave women with.
Don't be afraid to show up as your unique individual. We call it authentic leadership. You are worthy. You are good enough. You do not need the reinforcement of anyone except God. Yeah. And He made you worthy. And I so often think women are looking for others to validate them or to please others. And they don't show up in a confident, sharing their voice kind of way. And when I realized that, I was the first woman sitting in the executive suite or the first woman on executive committee in many different organizations, but especially at Walmart, I finally realized that they did not want just another man. That they invited me to that table because I had a very different experience in life. And quite honestly, I represented most of our customer base. Mm-hmm. And they needed that. They needed that from me. And when I finally wrestled to understand that and appreciate it in myself, it was a liberating moment. And I have a style where I build strong relationships and I put deposits in a lot of people's, emotional bank accounts, which then allowed me when I needed to take a strong position on something, they didn't question whether I was trying to be competitive. And I'm highly competitive, but my motive, they trusted. Mm-hmm. And they knew that the outcome was going to be, maybe not necessarily the outcome they wanted, but they didn't question my motive. And so they allowed me because of all that trust, to make recommendations and to share my voice in a way that they didn't shut me down and marginalize me, and they valued me.
That's awesome. And I want women to hear that men don't want us to show up like them.
Right.
At least
they
most
don't.
of them don't. They want us to show up as who we are. They need our voice. I love that. Celia, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today.
This has been great. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. You've been listening to She Works for Him with your hosts, Martha Brangenberg and Katherine Gates. We are Christian working women, helping other Christian women to live out their calling at work as she works for Him.
As Christian women, we have many roles. From daughter, sister, friend, wife, and mother to analyst, accountant, executive, or educator. Is it possible to balance our roles at work and home in a way that honors God? The answer is yes, and our new book, She Works for Him, will help show you how. Written to celebrate, encourage, and equip women in the workforce, She Works for Him discusses the diverse experiences of today's Christian working woman. Pick up a copy by going to iworkforhim.com/bookstore. You've been listening to the She Works for Him podcast with your hosts, Katherine Gates, Nadya Dickson, and Martha Brangenberg. Please like us on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube under She Works for Him. And to access any of the resources we mentioned on today's show, see the show notes at sheworksforhim.com. That's sheworks4him.com. This podcast was created to empower you to live out your calling at work so the world knows she works for Him.